Hello again, TryHard Enmity here. Today we're going to be starting off the 1.0.7 class update guides with the Demon Hunter, my new main. We're going to be discussing some specs and gearing, as well as the patch notes and the change for actual Demon Hunters themselves. So let's get started straight into the game with a few specs that I've made, and the main focus of these specs are Paragon farming, at least, efficiency. So let's get started with these now. Alright, so over the past couple weeks, maybe month, I've been focusing a lot on Paragon leveling. I find it's very, very important to cap your magic and, well, your magic find, not your gold find, really, in terms of getting lots and lots of gear. Obviously, the higher Paragon levels you have, the easier it is to achieve your magic find cap while maintaining high DPS. So, I find this extremely important for every single class. So I want to discuss a very efficient spec for Demon Hunters that is fully adjustable for your own playstyle as well. So we'll just go over the main basics of the spec, and keep in mind I'll go over the adjustments afterwards. So the main attack we'll be using is Hungering Arrow with Devouring Arrow. Now the reason I'm using this over a few of the other ones, which we'll mainly discuss in a bit, but I use this over things like Spray of Teeth and things like that, because AoE isn't a problem. When I'm AoEing, I'm using Elemental Arrow. I don't need to use Hungering Arrow for the Spray of Teeth AoE. The only time I ever use Hungering Arrow, because you literally never ever run out of hatred, you only use Devouring Arrow, Hungering Arrow, to kill singular elite mobs one at a time. Like if there's one left over, like a yellow elite, or whatever you want to call them, a champion, then you use that just to finish them off. So the AoE isn't important. It's all about the single target DPS on this spell, and we'll talk about the possible other things you can use instead of that in a second. Now, my secondary is Elemental Arrow. I would always recommend using this for efficiency because it's just absolutely amazing. It steamrolls through mobs, and the animation allows you to shoot a few times and then vault away from where you're actually fighting, and the Elemental Arrow will do all the work while you're actually fighting more mobs in a different area. Obviously, you don't have to see the mobs die anymore if you're not picking up loot like I don't. I only pick up legendaries, and when a legendary does drop, it shows it on the minimap anyway, so you don't need to see the mobs die. So you can shoot a few Elemental Arrow, Ball Lightnings, and just run away. So it works out absolutely perfect. Now, preparation is absolutely key, and I would definitely just recommend using straight up backup plan, because obviously you're mainly vaulting around all of the time, so you want to get prep up, and, backup plan proccing is a bonus. And now with the spec, discipline isn't much of an issue, but you still do find yourself using preparation, I'd say once every about a minute and a half. So it is nice to have, and the backup plan is a bonus. The other kind of runes aren't very good, actually, so I wouldn't recommend using those. We'll talk about that again in a bit. Now, Vault, this is absolutely essential. Vault with Tumble obviously reduces the cost of your next Vault by 50% when used in 6 seconds, so it goes down to 4, which is just absolutely fantastic. So you don't want to use anything but Vault with Tumble, because it's just so good for efficiency and movement speed. Now, Shadow Power with Gloom, I would always recommend using, because against reflect damage and things like that, it's hands down better than Smoke Screen with Lingering Fog. Definitely. Obviously, it just brings all your life back and things like that. Pretty much makes you immune on the lower monster powers to every single attack. And then on your companion, if you're in monster power 0, I would recommend either using the Ferret or the Bat. And if you go to monster power 2 and above, I'd use the Bat. Reason I'm saying use the Ferret is because it actually is nice for picking up gold, and if your pickup radius isn't that high, it does pick you up quite a bit of bonus gold off the ground, which is always really nice. The only bad kind of thing is, even with this spec, you will run out of hatred once in a while without the Bat, which is kind of annoying. So I'd use the Bat companion just for the hatred regen. Now, the passives are absolutely essential in terms of efficiency. You have Tactical Advantage, which makes your Vault obviously make you move quicker for 2 seconds, which is absolutely crucial. It's extremely good for efficiency, and it makes Vaults very viable. And then you have Night Stalker, which gives you 1 critical hit, or critical hit gives you 1 discipline. Absolutely crucial, again, in terms of keeping your discipline up, so you can just keep vaulting over and over and over. And then you have Vengeance, which is absolutely amazing, especially with a bit of pickup radius. It gives you 20 hatred and 2 discipline every time you pick up a health globe. So as you're constantly steamrolling mobs, you're constantly getting hatred back, and you're constantly getting discipline back. Combined with Night Stalker, your discipline when fighting mobs is always at 30 or 100% or whatever your discipline cap is. And you can literally just vault around like a madman all the time, and it's absolutely insane. Now, the weakness to this build, obviously, is you don't get many DPS talents. But as you can see, you can still maintain a good DPS value without any DPS talents at all. So, you know, it's the only thing I would really recommend doing is if you have problems with DPS and your monster power is 0, like maybe you're below 100k DPS, you can swap Night Stalker for either archery or steady aim. It's up to your playstyle how close you get to the mobs. I get close to the mobs, so I would swap it for archery personally. And that'll up your DPS by, you know, a little bit, maybe about 10%, maybe 5% for your character, which is overall good. And Night Stalker, I would say Vengeance is better than Night Stalker in terms of resource management, because it gives you that extra hatred back. And if you're spamming ball lightning all the time, even with your bat, you can go low on hatred. So when you're constantly picking up health globes, the hatred is very nice to have, because when you run out of hatred, that's when your efficiency goes down, because then you're relying on Hungering Arrow. Even if you're using Spray of Teeth, relying on Hungering Arrow isn't good in terms of efficiency. Ball lightning is just where it's at. It's the best spell by far. So let's talk about a few variations of a spec you can use just to make it suit your playstyle a bit more, and maybe just make it a bit more fun. Alright, so the beauty of playing at low monster powers is your primary attack doesn't really matter. Like, I rarely use my primary attack. The only time I'll use Hungering Arrow is if I have a single elite mob left to kill. And that's pretty rare. I mean, and even when that happens, Ball Lightning DPS isn't that far off, because Hungering Arrow isn't the most consistent of attacks. So, you know, it doesn't always pierce through the enemy. So Devouring Arrow sometimes you can shoot 3 or 4 Hungering Arrows and it won't pierce the enemy, where Ball Lightning would have done more consistent damage over that amount of time. So your primary attack doesn't really matter. So I'd recommend using Devouring Arrow, because it is good, and when it procs, it just instantly kills the mob. Like, I crit for like, you know, when it pierces the mob once, it goes for like 700k or something. So it's really good damage. Now, in terms of consistent single target damage, Puncturing Arrow is much more consistent. You will rarely shoot 3 or 4 Hungering Arrows and not get a proc on your pierce. So this is clearly more consistent in terms of just getting the mob down a bit quicker, but I kind of like the RNG of Devouring Arrow, and it doesn't really make too big of a difference seeing if it'll proc or not. So, but Puncturing Arrow is much more consistent. So if you want really consistent single target damage that you know is going to do a certain amount of damage every single time, go for Puncturing Arrow. And then of course you have Spray of Teeth, which is good for AoE, and it's not bad. I mean, I just rely on Ball Lightning so much. I use it constantly. So I wouldn't really recommend Spray of Teeth. If you're going to use an AoE attack on your primary, what I would recommend though is Ball a Shot with Imminent Doom. Now, the only downside to this is you do have to wait 2 seconds, but like if you shoot 2 or 3 Ball shots and like 3 or 4 Ball Lightnings, it all explodes at once. So like the Ball shots will blow up just as the Ball Lightnings are going through the enemies, resulting in really crazy burst damage. The DPS might not be as high because of the wait time on it, so it just seems like the DPS is higher, but it's really fun. And Ball shot's a really fun attack. Like, it shoots really fast, the projectile's pretty instant, and the damage is so cool. Like, it does really good damage. Now, in terms of clearing trash with your primary, just like kind of white mobs and stuff, if you use, volatile explosives, the range on it is crazy. So it's almost on par with Ball Lightning in terms of damage, but it's more the fact that you can't shoot and forget like you can with Ball Lightning. So Ball Shot is good with volatile explosives, but it's more of a fun thing using that. And now something I was using for actually a while, surprisingly, you'll be surprised, Chain Gang with Entangling Shot. Now, this hits 4 mobs, and it hits them instantly. So the damage, there's no wait time on the damage. And the plus side is if you see a group of ranged mobs, like the Shamans or the Malaks, like the ranged kind of bat guys, if you shoot that in first, it chains them together, slowing them, and they don't spread out as quickly. So your Ball Lightnings do more consistent damage as they're all clumped up together for longer. So, you know, you get the jump on them with Chain Gang, they're slowed together, and then you Ball Lightning them, they won't spread out as fast, because ranged mobs have a tendency to just spread apart from each other and just really just piss you off, really. It just annoys you. Where melee mobs will just kind of hug you and all run towards you. So this is really good for ranged mobs, and the damage isn't bad. It sounds bad, 90 kind of weapon damage, but since it's instant when it hits the mobs, it's pretty effective damage, and I definitely recommend using it. But as far as primaries go, that's all I'd really recommend using. Now, in terms of your secondary, another really good one to use is Chakram. with twin chakrams. Now, this obviously kind of shoots, you know, 2 at once, and it's almost on par with ball lightning again. The only downside is sometimes in between the attacks, like in that little blind spot, you actually miss mobs sometimes. Like, mobs will run in between them and things like that. So you do lose a bit of DPS if it's not positioned correctly. And sometimes when mobs are standing on top of you, it doesn't hit them for some reason. I thought they fixed this a while ago, but it didn't. Now, the beauty of ball lightning, why it's so good, is if there's mobs behind my character where my summoner is right now, and I shoot, it will hit those mobs around the back of my character. It hits a 360 cone around your character. A very small radius. It's only about 3 yards, but it does hit everything that's on your character, which is beautiful. So when you jump in the middle of a group and you start shooting one direction, it'll hit things behind you a bit, which is why I'd say ball lightning is probably the best out of all of them. And in terms of other secondaries, nothing else really competes with Chakram or Elemental Arrow in terms of efficiency. Rapid Fire and Impale are more just kind of gimmicky, fun things. Like Impale is more of a PvP spell with the Chemical Burn. But it's, yeah, and Rapid Fire is only really good against Infernal Machine bosses where you're doing 100% uptime on your DPS. But other than that, those are the most efficient spells, and I definitely recommend using them. Now, in terms of your action bar skills, I really wouldn't recommend swapping many of these. The only one I would recommend swapping is the Bat Companion. Like, if your pickup radius is high enough, you pick up so many health globes that your hatred is normally high. But there is the occasional chance where health globes don't drop, and you will run out of hatred without the Bat Companion. But if you are going to not use a Bat Companion, you can swap it for a variation of things. The main thing I'd probably recommend swapping it for is Rain of Vengeance with pretty much any of the runes. They're all really good. Like the one with Shadow Beasts is really good. You can use Cluster Arrow maybe just for a bit of variation and a bit of fun. But other than that, I wouldn't really swap too much out. Maybe you could get Multi-Shot in there. Actually, I'd recommend Multi-Shot over Elemental Arrow. If that's your style. I forgot to mention that. The problem is with Multi-Shot is the range isn't as far as I'd like it to be. With Elemental Arrow, I shoot a few, and it goes kind of off-screen and kills stuff off-screen as well, where Multi-Shot does not do that. So I'd definitely recommend Ball Lightning still over Multi-Shot. But other than that, the spec is pretty... I'd probably only recommend really changing your primary or secondary. I wouldn't change many of the action bar skills because these are very, very efficient. Like backup plan proccing gives you all your discipline back. Really good. Vault, you need to get around. Back Companion does keep your hatred regen at a consistent rate. And then Shadow Power is excellent for reflect damage. Now, if you're playing Monster Power 0, I can actually get away with not playing with Shadow Power because since my pickup radius is so high, it's about almost 20 yards, when I do hit mobs, I pick up the health globes before the reflect damage kills me. So I'm constantly healing before the reflect damage can kill me on Monster Power 0. So I could actually swap out Shadow Power, but it's just a safety net. When you're not paying attention, it's nice to pop and things like that. And then your passive skills, I wouldn't actually really change these because the combination of Night Stalker with Vengeance is absolutely fantastic for your kind of resource management. And then Tactical Advantage is just absolutely crucial for like efficiency, speed, and things like that. But yeah, guys, that's the spec. We'll leave it at that spec for today because other than that, nothing really has changed for Demon Hunter, so the same old specs you've been playing with are probably, still good. But I definitely recommend trying the spec out and see how well your efficiency goes up in lower monster powers. I can guarantee it'll go up a lot, and you'll enjoy the spec. So yeah, give that a shot. Let's talk about some gear, though. Alright, guys, so in terms of gearing, not a lot has changed in terms of actually what stats you want and things like that. I'm not going to go over this in too much detail, mainly because by now you all know what stats to get. So we're just going to talk about just roughly a few of the items. There's my legendary guide, which I'll show at the end of the video. You can go to as well, which discusses all of the legendaries and why you want to get them on your Demon Hunter, and exactly why they're good. So I'd always aim for your Natalia's 2 set because it has 7% critical hit chance, and critical hit chance is your biggest DPS multiplier. Obviously, once you have to get your critical hit damage up to make that effective, but your 2 set is absolutely crucial. Now, a few of my gearing choices you might think are a bit strange, but I do have a reason for them all, and I'll go over them. So, the boots aren't necessarily good Natalia's, but they have Magic Find on there, so I obviously want to cap my Magic Find at 300 all the time. Because that's absolutely crucial for legendary drop rate and things like that. So those aren't the best they could be, but you can get a good pair of Natalia's for very, very cheap now, and I definitely recommend going for the boots. They're the crucial part you'd want for your Natalia set. Then in a set is the same. You want to go for the 2 set. Later on, you can afford not getting it because there's other options you can get, but I definitely recommend going for the 2 set. The chest piece and the legs were my favorite pieces. Now, The legs are very, very good. They get attack speed, critical hit chance, movement speed, all that, and just generally they're really, really good. And then the chest piece is equally as good. It can get really high dex to invite, and then it gets life, percentage, and then it gets reduced damage from melee attacks. And I find the reduced damage from melee attacks on your chest and your boots adds up to 10%, and that will almost 10%, and that 10% is actually very good for taking melee hits, even on the higher monster powers. So the combination of those two alone, it's a bit underrated, but it's really good. And then a few of the other items you could go for. Now, my Natalia sight is my worst piece of gear, but I'm not spending gold until I have enough for a Mempo. And then when I hit level 100 Paragon, I'm swapping out my Leoric Signet for the Natalia's ring with average damage, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage. So that's going to be my setup. So as you can see, like, the helm's really shitty, but I definitely recommend going for Natalia's helm to get your cheap 2 set for your Natalia's, because it's very, very cheap helm, and it's reasonable as well. I mean, it's got dexterity, critical hit chance on there, and then you can get a socket in there as well. So, and that's really cheap. You can get that for a very, very cheap amount. So that's really good for going for your 2 set. And then the rest of your items, completely up to you. Like, I went for a Witching Hour because it's an excellent belt, and it adds, let's have a look. Adds 30k DPS to my DPS. So, it's very, very good. But generally on your gear, you want to go for, critical hit chance, and then attack speed or critical hit damage. So, like, on your rings, you want attack speed, average damage, critical hit chance, or attack speed, average damage, and critical hit chance, or sorry, average damage, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage. Or get the trifecta if you can afford it. But yeah, you need to balance out your critical hit chance, get it on every single slot you can. So like neck, bracers, rings, things like that. You just want as much as you can, and you want to start stacking crit damage as well. So nothing has changed, as you can see. It's just you just want critical hit chance, critical hit damage, and then high dexterity, as well as average damage on every piece you can get it. Average damage is extremely important towards your DPS. It's more important than you would know. Like that 26 to 50 average damage outweighs attack speed. Depending on, I think it outweighed like 6% attack speed, 7% attack speed. So as you can see, it's an extremely important stat. And then in terms of weapon, things like that, the Manticore is the obvious choice. Depending on the money you have, you can actually get a Manticore with higher DPS and 1 socket that will be better than a lower DPS Manticore with 2 sockets. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at your Manticore. But I'd always search for a Manticore with dexterity, because dexterity does add quite a bit of DPS. It's surprising how much it adds. But yeah, I'd always check the single socket Manticores before you check out the double socket ones as well, to see if you can get, because if you can get 200 DPS higher with 1 socket, it'd be better than a 200 DPS lower with 2 socket Manticore, most likely. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. But in terms of quiver, Dead Man's Legacy, I'd say, is the obvious choice. You can add, it's just, you can get so much good things on it. Like elemental arrow damage is nasty. It has really high critical hit chance. You can get up to 20% attack speed, and then the stat values on them, like if I didn't have Magic Find on there, you can get up to 300 plus dexterity. So this is potentially an amazing quiver, and I definitely recommend going for this one over everything. Now in terms of dual wielding, there are a few reasonable dual wield items, but they're only for top end geared players. The dual wielding is only really good when you have the best gear. If you don't have the best gear, it's fun because it's so fast paced, but the DPS is lower, so it's definitely not recommended going for. Now, if you watched my guide on whatever it's called, the new crafting, I definitely recommend looking at crafting some epics or some yellows over buying a few of the base items you can buy. Like if you can get a cheap Manticore, or not a Manticore, if you can get a cheap Val Ward with 200 plus dexterity for less than like 1,000,000 gold or something, buy it, because that's a good starting legendary. But if you're like higher end gear and you want a really good pair of like shoulders, bracers, gloves, neck, I'd recommend crafting these items. It's absolutely amazing. Watch the video that I made on crafting legendary or crafting items in 1.0.7, because it goes over in detail the risks and benefits of crafting these items. But as you can see, as an example, this is much better than any Val Ward. It's got strength equaling the armor. It's got dexterity over 300. It's got all resist on par with the all resist on my Val Ward, or on any Val Ward, and then it's got the intelligence upping the all resist by 9 as well. So that's almost 90 all resist, 220, or yeah, a really high armor on the strength, and then dexterity as well. So crafting, as you can see, is very good for your gear set. I crafted those as well, which are just absolutely fantastic. It's got pickup radius and things like that. Oh, and that's the other thing we'll finish talking about with the gear. Two more things. So we were talking about efficiency. Now, Leoric Signet is absolutely amazing in terms of bonus experience. It obviously lowers your DPS, but as you can see, you can still achieve high DPS. Like, I don't have DPS talents in or a secondary ring. So with those, you hit almost like 280k DPS. But even without them, you can get really good DPS. Now, this is awesome. This ring, why it's so good is not only the bonus experience, but the pickup radius on it. Now, the pickup radius is very important for optimizing your talent Vengeance. Obviously, you pick up health globes. I think I have 15-yard pickup radius on my gloves. Now, you pick up health globes from 14 yards away. That's absolutely amazing, and you really notice a difference in your discipline going up. So I'd recommend going for a Leoric Signet. A 20% one is pretty cheap nowadays. I think it's only 10 million gold, which is kind of expensive, but if you save enough, you can get it, and it does make a difference in your actual paragon leveling speed. You will notice it. Maybe not towards like level 80 plus, because leveling takes a lot longer then, but you will notice a difference. So I definitely recommend going for a Leoric Signet. And another thing is, you gain experience gain from your follower. So, you know, if I take out my Leoric Signet on my follower, you watch my experience from 153 goes down to 149. So that adds 4% experience, and my Hellfire Ring adds 7% experience. So between them, that's 11% extra experience on my follower, which is just absolutely fantastic. And another thing to keep in mind is your Magic Find also transfers over from your follower as well. So as you can see, I don't know if it'll change. Yeah, I go down by 4%. So that's actually keeping my cap up, those two items. I think she gets 20% of your Magic Find on your items. So if you have, 10 Magic Find on your follower, you'll get 2 Magic Find from your gear. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So experience and Magic Find do transfer over from your follower. So Grand Visitor is a great way to go. As you can see, you can get Intelligence, Vitality, and Gold Find and Magic Find on there. And that was only like 200k gold or something. And then obviously, go for a neck with high Vitality and Magic Find on there as well, so your follower stays alive. And then the last thing is slots you can get pickup radius on are your gloves, shoulders, and bracers are the main slots you want to get them on. Now, the crafted bracers, you can roll a pretty damn good pair with pickup radius on them. Shoulders goes the same. You can get pretty good pair with pickup radius, and then gloves also follow that rule, where if you craft them, you can end up with a really, really good pair with pickup radius. As you can see, like, that's absolutely lucky as hell, that roll, but it does happen. And then obviously your Leoric Signet, 7 yards, so it's absolutely amazing. I definitely recommend going for it. But yeah, guys, that's enough for gearing. Let's talk about the patch notes and how they've affected Demon Hunters as a whole. And one more tiny little thing I forgot to mention with gearing is the other really good ring is Stone of Jordan. Now, reason why this is so good, and I actually, on Monster Power 2, whenever I come across an elite pack, I quickly equip this, is it gives you 20% minimum elite damage, which is just absolutely amazing, and then you can get elemental arrow damage on there as well. So a perfect one, you could get over 40% increased damage. Now, when you see an elite pack and you pop this on, you instantly kill them and you notice the difference. So I definitely recommend looking at a Stone of Jordan with the combination of whatever main attack you're using. Now, when you're searching for a Stone of Jordan, since it's hard to actually search for specific Demon Hunter ones, what you do in the search box is you search for damage versus elites, 20% plus, and then max discipline, and this will filter out all the Demon Hunter rings. You can't, unfortunately, filter out the bonus stat, which is the elemental arrow, but you can filter out those two to find a good Stone of Jordan. So I definitely recommend looking into those, and it's very, very good for efficiency. So yeah, have a look. Alright guys, so in terms of the actual patch notes, as you can see, the changes are pretty non-existent for Demon Hunters, and I'll explain why quickly. Demon Hunters at the moment are pretty good overall. None of their skills really need too much tweaking. The only thing I can see that I'd like to see, changed with Demon Hunters is how efficient we can be at higher monster powers. Now, when you get to higher monster powers, you realize that Demon Hunters aren't as strong as other classes, and I don't like the motto of playing other games, comparing my class to other classes, but in Diablo, it's nice to have your efficiency as well as other classes, because time is money in this game, and when you're farming all the time, you want to be doing it as efficiently as possible. When another class is doing it much more efficiently, it is kind of annoying, and it does kind of deter you away from the class you're playing, unless you really love the class and you're having lots of fun with it. So I'd like to see a change that would make Demon Hunters maybe a bit better and higher monster powers. it's just like our survivability goes down a lot, and it's hard to maintain high DPS and good survivability on Demon Hunter, where on a CM Wizard, you don't need much survivability because you know, well, you do need a certain amount, but you stack, you know, you're CCing all the time and you're CMing. And then, like, on a Barbarian, it's easier. I find it a lot easier on a Barb to stack survivability and DPS at the same time. And then Monks are just so strong at higher monster powers. Witch Doctors probably are almost on par with Demon Hunters, I'd say. But it would just be nice to see, you know, just a few changes to make Demon Hunters a bit better at higher monster power. But I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that's probably what's going to happen in 1.0.8 if my prediction is correct. But other than that, in terms of changes, nothing has really changed. They increased our pickup radius by 1.5 as a base, which is kind of nice. They increase experience as your monster power gets higher. So I farm a monster power 2, which I think was 50% increased experience, if I'm correct. I might be wrong. Which I thought was a good amount, and it makes it a lot more efficient than farming monster power 0, I find. Well, with my gear at least. But other than that, not too much has changed. Let's just have a quick look. I just want to see if there's anything else. I'm pretty sure there's nothing. The main mechanic difference in this patch was reflect damage. They changed reflect damage to work a lot like shielding now, where it's a short buff duration on the monster, so they're not constantly reflecting damage. So if you vault over to a mob and you don't have enough discipline for Gloom because you just wasted all your discipline on Vault and preparation's not up, then that reflect damage mob isn't going to like shred your face off instantly. It's not just going to like melt you. You're going to, you know, be able to survive it because A, the damage reduced on it, and B, it's not going to be 100% uptime on the mob, so you can cast your shots when it's down. So that's a nice little change, but other than that, nothing much has changed for Demon Hunters. I have a feeling 1.0.8 will be our saving grace in terms of mechanic changes and things like that, so we can only wait and see. Other than that, the main difference in PvP was we got 30% damage reduction now while PvPing, which is completely justified. Demon Hunters are very strong in PvP, but if you're against a player who actually times correctly in between your smoke screens, you're in a lot of trouble. So that extra survivability is quite useful. But if you're against someone who doesn't know how to time, you come in a smoke screen, then it's just kind of funny. But yeah, guys, so let's talk about some future guides that are coming out. Okay, so that about wraps it up for the Demon Hunter 1.0.7 guide. I just wanted to start off by saying thank you very, very much for watching these videos, guys, and thanks so much for subscribing and liking them as well. I really appreciate every single subscriber, and I do really appreciate your input in the comment section below, whether it's negative, you know, or constructive. I do read every single comment. I do try to respond to all of them, but it's hard to keep up with sometimes. I've been pretty busy lately as well, so I do try my best. So if I ignore you, don't take it to heart. You know, I'm just busy. Maybe comment again in the same comments, and if I see you've commented twice, I'll probably just comment back. Regardless. So yeah, guys, thanks very much for watching. I'm sorry this guide didn't have as much content as it should have, but as you can see with the patch notes, not much changed for the Demon Hunter 1.0.7, so I almost consider not doing a guide, but I wanted to show off the efficiency spec regardless in a separate guide, so yeah, we got there in the end. But future guides that are coming out, if you check out the what is coming out in February, most of those guides are still coming out. The video is on my channel, so go check that out. But in terms of future guides, I'm going to finish off the 1.0.7 class guides in due time. I'm going to do it as fast as I can. Then we have the Wizard Legendary Guide coming out, and then as well as that, I'm doing the Demonic Farming Essence Guide, which will be out later this week, and it'll go over the best routes for demonic farming, for demonic essences, so you can craft gear as fast as possible and hopefully get some good RNG rolls. But yeah, guys, thank you very, very much for watching. That's it for today, and I will see you all on Thursday or Friday with a new video. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Twitch. I do plan on starting to live stream soon. I know I say that a lot, but I want to do it correctly. I want to do it properly. I want to live stream on a scheduled basis, and I just need the time to do it. So when I do, it'll start up. So don't forget to follow me on there anyway, so when I do start, you'll see me come online. But yeah, guys, thank you very, very much for watching. I will see you all on Thursday, Friday. Bye-bye.